Hello, my name is Sophia VanGelder, and my experiment is about making and comparing the growth of rock candy that is plain, flavored, dyed, and both flavored and dyed. I chose this experiment to test if the pure rock candy would form faster or more crystals when compared to the others. Unfortunately, it did not turn out as expected, and I had 4 different trials. The first step was to set up the skewers in mason jars. First, I cut the skewers to size, then wet them about 1/3 of the way and dipped them in sugar and let them dry for about an hour. I then washed the mason jars, and when the skewers and mason jars were dry, I weighed the skewers, then adjusted the height in the jar with the clothespins. To do this, I ensured the bottom of the skewer was at the 100 milliliter mark on the mason jars, as seen in this video, then set the skewers aside for easier pouring of the solution later on. The second step was to boil the water and sugar together. This step is the main step where changes were made between the trials based off the different recipes. The video on the left shows the first cup of sugar being dissolved in the water. The top right picture is of after the last cup of sugar was dissolved in the water for the first trial. For this trial, I used a 1 to 3.5 ratio of water to sugar, which was 3 cups water and 10½ cups of sugar. For the second and third trial, I decreased the amount of sugar to a 1 to 3 ratio. For the second, it was 2 cups of water and 6 cups of sugar, which was increased to 3 cups of water and 9 cups of sugar for the third trial, because I almost didn't have enough of the mixture for the second trial. For the fourth and last trial, I decreased the sugar even more to a 1 to 2 ratio, which was 3 cups of water to 6 cups of sugar. The bottom right picture is of after the 6th cup of sugar was added in the last trial. This solution is much clearer than above, which is what should have been the case. I also heated the jars with warm water as the solution was boiling. The third step is pouring the mixture into the jars and adding the flavoring and dye. For all of these trials, I filled the jars to the 300 milliliter mark. The top right picture is the first trial. For this, after dissolving the last cup of sugar, I took the solution off the heat and let it cool for about 10 minutes before pouring it into the jars, then added the flavoring and dye and stirred. All of the specks seen are of pieces of sugar that are already solidifying/crystallizing. I should have known then that trial would not have worked. The picture on the left is of the second trial. For this, I let the solution boil for about 10 minutes, then cool for about 15 to 20 minutes. Although it's hard to see, this picture can kind of show how the solution was filled to the 300 milliliter mark. For the third trial, I let it boil for about 15 minutes, then poured it straight into the jars. I noticed the crystals like in the first trial, so I discarded it immediately and didn't even fill all the jars, which the solution was so hot it even cracked one. The bottom right picture is of the last trial. I boiled it for about 20 minutes and let it cool for about 25 minutes. Notice how it is visibly clearer than the other trials. For this trial, I could only do the plain, flavoring, and dye because one of the jars was already cracked. The fourth step was to add the skewers to the jars. I moved the jars before adding the skewers because they shouldn't be moved once added. I then loosely covered the jars with the saran wrap. The left picture is of the first trial, and I realized the wrap covered too much of the jars and you couldn't exactly see what was happening. The top right picture is of the second trial. The dyed jar looks thicker already because I was running out of the mix and had to scrape the pan to fill it, which I believe cooled it even faster. The bottom picture is of the last trial. The fifth step was to observe the crystal's growth on the skewers for about 7 days. Originally, I was going to take pictures of the growth every day, but things did not go according to plan. Unfortunately, I did not take pictures of the first 3 trials because I believe them to be failed trials. These pictures shown are of what the fourth trial looked like after about a day. The other trials were very similar in appearance. Although the experiment didn't go as planned, the results can still be commented on. The pictures on the top is what the jars looked like after breaking the top layer as seen in the previous slide, which was the top layer of crystals that had formed on all of the jars. I noticed the plain mixtures seemed to have less remaining liquid than the flavored and dyed mixtures as seen in the bottom pictures. After weighing the liquid, the plain had about 11.5 grams, flavored had about 15.2 grams, and the dyed had about 14.3 grams of liquid remaining. This means that the flavoring and dye impurities slightly hindered the crystal growth. Based on research, the main reasons why the crystals form how they did is due to oversaturation, having sugar in the mixture that wasn't completely dissolved, or too fast of cooling. I decreased the ratio of sugar to water to try to take care of the oversaturation, but I am wondering if too much water got boiled out of the solution. I also tried heating the mixture for longer periods of time to make sure all the sugar was dissolved. The AC is kept on the colder side where I am living, which might have had an effect on the crystal formation. In conclusion, I tried doing this experiment 4 times, changing one or more aspects each trial, but they all ended with the same result where the crystals did not form as expected. This was most likely due to the solution being oversaturated or having too fast of a cooling rate. If I were to repeat an experiment like this to view crystal formation, I would use the borax method where that is used in place of the sugar, since this experiment is known for being easier to produce the desired results.